Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. India has been witnessing a growing number of corporate frauds, corporate crimes, and NPAs, willful defaults, banking frauds. And one of the methods of resolving these kind of instances of corporate frauds and NPAs has been takeover of failed and fraudulent entities by new investors, by new managements. A takeover typically means that there's a change in the management and ownership of a company, and that is done in order to restore and revive the entity and bring some kind of stability in a system which is already so shaky. The objective of a typical takeover is to throw out the present management, ensure that the outgoing promoters, the scammy promoters who are fraudsters or who violated the laws are suitably prosecuted and punished, to ensure that the company is saved and salvaged, such as to protect the interests of the shareholders and the lenders to the entity. We have been seeing takeovers in two kinds of situation, either because of NCLT orders, that is, orders passed by the NCLT resulting in takeover of an entity, or takeovers pursuant to government and regulatory intervention. The takeovers and change of management that have taken place on account of NCLT orders is certainly long. It started with the likes of Bhushan Steel, Bhushan Power, SR Steel, Electro Steel, Jet Airways, and many others. At the moment, the NCLT has been virtually non-functional, and thus there's a bit of a pause in this list. But the list will certainly go on because more and more bankruptcy cases will come to the NCLT, and the resolution will involve perhaps takeover of the enterprise by a new management, by a new investor. The next category has been takeovers because of regulatory intervention by the government. And that took place in the case of ILFS. It took place in the case of Yes Bank, Lakshmi Vilas Bank, and perhaps it will happen in the case of DHFL, PMC Bank, Reliance Capital, and also Reliance Housing Finance, all of which are on the block. But as we saw in the case of SR Steel, we saw in the case of Jet Airways, and perhaps what we are seeing in the case of DHFL, takeovers are not easy. They are fiercely contested, and the more resourceful the outgoing promoter, the more money that he has, the more that is at stake for him, the more the litigation takes place, and thus it becomes a long-drawn affair, even though if you take the case of the NCLT, it is supposed to be happening in a time-bound manner. But broadly, if we talk about the takeover process, it involves evaluating the entity, calling for expressions of interest, then calling from bids from eligible and competent investors in order to acquire the company, such as to take over, pump in additional monies, and revive and rescue the struggling company. We saw in the case of Yes Bank that the initial amount of 10,000 crores came from State Bank of India and various other banks to take over the bank and stabilize it. In the case of Lakshmi Vilas Bank, the initial amount put in by DBS is about 2,500 crores. The amount expected to be pumped in for takeover of DHFL is about 40,000 crores. And in the case of PMC Bank, it is about 7,000 crores. Thus, any takeover, of course, entails a large budget. And thus, you are seeing deep-pocketed players in the game. What is happening in a typical takeover, or what is happening in takeovers in India as we are seeing? The first thing that we are witnessing is many a times there has been an attempt by the existing promoter to make a backdoor entry and take back his company. Rana Kapoor tried that in the case of Yes Bank. The Vadvans are trying it in the case of DHFL. And so was the case of Jet Airways, where the outgoing promoter Naresh Goyal tried to take back his company through various fronts that he had put up. So first we see attempted backdoor takeovers in many instances. We then see that in most of them, in order to make the takeover an attractive proposition, the lenders end up taking a huge haircut to their exposure. That's happening in the case of DHFL, where lenders are expected to lose at least 60% of the loans that they've given. We saw it in the case of Yes Bank, where the bondholders, to the tune of 10,000 crores, simply found their bonds to be just written off on takeover. So we are witnessing huge haircuts in order to make the takeovers a viable proposition or an attractive proposition for investors. We then are witnessing shareholder wealth being lost and decimated. That happened in the case of Lakshmi Vilas Bank, where the entire capital was written off. We also saw in the case of Yes Bank, where the existing shareholders have suffered immensely. And that also recently happened in the case of an Uttam Group company, where the entire capital has been written off, even though it constituted 54% of the capital of the company. So we are seeing shareholder wealth being lost in a big way. Thus, in order to make the takeover attractive, not only are the lenders losing money, but so has been the case with shareholders of the company. After a takeover takes place, after a new management comes in, we are expecting and we are seeing slowly action being taken against the criminal fraudulent promoters. That has happened in the case of Rana Kapoor, it has happened in the case of Vadwan. But what we are not seeing is stringent, swift action against the erring bankers, against the bankers who colluded, against the directors who are accomplices, and also the auditors. So while action does take place, though at a very slow pace, against the fraudulent and criminal promoters, we are not seeing it happen against all the accomplices who made these kinds of frauds possible. Then the change that is taking place is to save the company. And that typically happens if the investor is genuine, if the investor is competent and has got good industry exposure. We saw that in the case of SR Steel, which got taken over by ArcelorMittal. So the change to take over the company, the change to run the company as a viable entity happens only when a genuine, competent, eligible investor is involved in the takeover. What we are then witnessing is that once the old management is thrown out, once that management which committed the crimes in the company is thrown out, then it becomes much easier to investigate the affairs of the company and all the crimes that were committed by those promoters. That's very obvious. The old promoters, till the time they were on the chair, they were thwarting and obstructing any kind of a meaningful investigation into the affairs of the company. And once they are out, it's much easier to conduct it. We saw that happening in the case of Yes Bank, for example. Till the time Rana Kapoor was on the chair, no meaningful investigation truly took place in the affairs of Yes Bank. It's only when he was kicked out that investigations started in the right direction and he was soon arrested and has been put behind the bars. Further, what we see is because the new investor comes in with funds and infuses additional funds and capital in the company, which helps to repay lenders and creditors to the extent possible. Because of that, stability starts coming in the system. Takeovers are meant to stabilize the system, as we saw in the case of ILFS. And thus, in the case of every takeover, some kind of a stability starts coming into the system. But despite all this, the company continues to be liable. The company continues to be liable for all the crimes that were committed by the outgoing management. And it ends up paying heavy penalty for crimes committed and also for tax evasion and tax crimes and money laundering that might take place. Thus, the company does continue to be liable for the crimes that were committed. What is the larger picture that emerges here? The larger picture that emerges is what we need are takeovers and not what we call makeovers. We do not need makeovers that merely restyle and reshape an existing company without any meaningful change in it. We do not need makeovers by the existing management such that all those who indulge in the scam are protected. We need what we call genuine takeovers and not cosmetic, specious, artificial makeovers of a scammy enterprise to protect all the criminals. And what does that mean? In order to ensure that it is a takeover and not a makeover, we first need to ensure that no backdoor entry is permitted to the existing promoter who was responsible for the downfall of the company, who was responsible for the frauds, who was responsible for the corporate crimes. That cannot be allowed at any cost. The second is, once a takeover is put in place, the assets of the company, all the wealth of the company must be recovered at the earliest possible and not allowed to be taken away. Thus, if the old management had indulged in siphoning of funds, chase them, get the money out, it belongs to the company. That will help to strengthen the company. It will also give some kind of a confidence in the new system that has come in. And of course, what you need is to punish. You need to punish all those who participate in the crimes. Punish the management, punish the promoters, punish the directors, punish the bankers, punish the auditors. And unless that is not done, you will not see any meaningful takeover truly taking place. Further, get into takeovers, get into ensuring that enterprises are revived only if they are found to be viable. Do not seek to revive enterprises that are not viable, because it will be a failed takeover and it will only erode confidence in the entire exercise. And finally, for a takeover to be a takeover and not a makeover, what we need are managements with resources, managements with a track record, managements that believe in transparency, and those who believe in ethics and corporate governance. If all this is done, then we will certainly see successful takeovers and not specious cosmetic makeovers. Till that is not done, we certainly run the danger of many a company which are on the block, and they will not necessarily result in meaningful takeovers. It might just be makeovers, and that defeats the entire exercise of trying to resolve a failed entity, of trying to resolve a fraudulent entity. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Hello everyone. HW News English is 2 years old now. When we started this venture, we promised ourselves one thing, that news should remain free, because right to know is the right of every Indian. But to keep news free for everyone, we need support from some of you. And thus we have rolled out membership on our YouTube channel HW News English. But mind you, the membership is completely voluntary. The programs that we were doing earlier, that we are doing now, will continue to remain free. First level is a basic level. Here, you can be our supporter by paying rupees 199 per month. This membership gives you certain perks and benefits. The perks include unique badges in front of your name, a live show from Mr. Sujit Nair and from Mr. Akhilesh Bhargava per month for our members. You can also vote in some exclusive members-only polls. Now the second level is Super Supporter. Here you can be our Super Supporter by paying rupees 3,999 per month. This membership will include every perk that comes with basic level. Additionally, our Super Supporters can be a part of a WhatsApp group where we can have discussions and suggestions on various topics. The second perk includes a gift pack with our merchandise. And the third perk is a Google Meet with Mr. Sujit Nair, where you can join the meet and ask your questions to Mr. Nair face to face. Lastly, if you like, we would give a shout out to our super supporters in our programs. So, hope to see you soon with our badges.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.
If you like this video, please share it, and we would love to hear your comments in the comments section down here. Also, please do like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter to get minute-to-minute news updates. For more such shows and videos, well, subscribe to our YouTube channel.